Get straight into it this morning, and a very good morning to you and welcome to the platform. So much going on and we've got a short week, so we need to get into it. Now, next guest, our first guest this morning, a very busy person, Nicola Willis, who is of course the Deputy Leader of the National Party, which has had rather a good week. A poll that turned around, another poll that didn't turn around quite so much, and really a schism appearing in the Labour Party over the contentious issue of tax, particularly tax on the wealthy. It has been revealed that there was serious work done to introduce or to scope out a couple of possible wealth taxes. Grant Robertson was into it. We know David Parker was into it. And apparently, so we are told, Chris Hipkins said no. To talk about all those issues, Nicola joins us now. Nice to have you with us, Nicola. You've had a good week.
Good morning. Well, look, I think that the country is pretty clear that it doesn't like the direction this government is taking it. And we've got more and more people saying, OK, National, how are you going to sort it out? Because we're listening to you now.
All right, let's have a look at this tax issue. Hipkins says off the agenda, no. Some suggestion, I think Jenna Lynch wrote a story, which in itself is remarkable. But she said they were worried about rural communities and farmers revolting at the wealth tax. Do you think they were utterly transparent about their plans there?
Well, look, this is a party, the Labour Party, that went into the last election saying no new taxes. And we already have had that promise broken. We had the landlord taxes introduced, the app tax, they tried to do the KiwiSaver tax, they've done the ute tax. But what's really concerning here is that it turns out that from about August last year, they had dozens of officials scurrying around, putting huge amounts of work into designing new taxes. They looked at a windfall tax, they looked at a worker tax to pay for the cyclone, they looked at a wealth tax, they looked at a capital gains tax. And my view on that is, why are you spending public time and public money on developing policies you said you wouldn't implement? And to me, that isn't transparent and that's not consistent with the commitments that they made. Look, you know, we've had Chris Hipkins come out and say, look, I don't think we're going to do that. Well, what's going on? Why did it go all the way to Cabinet? If he doesn't trust Grant Robertson's judgment on tax, then why should any New Zealander trust Grant Robertson's judgment?
And we've got the Greens saying they may make this, or these new taxes, a bottom line for coalition discussions post-election if things work out that way. So I guess a voter sits there and go, well, we know Labor doesn't like National, doesn't mind swapping its leaders. What is their policy on this? What is their real policy on this?
Yeah, look, it's a total mess, Sean. We've talked about the coalition of chaos. Well, in this case, the chaos is coming even before the coalition because you've got divisions within Labour with clearly a large group of people really wanting to tax New Zealanders more, thirsty for that opportunity. You've got the Greens saying, come on, let's do it. You've got Te Pāti Māori also campaigning on a platform of new taxes. And so I think the legitimate concern anyone voting for any of those parties should have is that it doesn't really matter what they're saying now. Faced with the opportunity to form a coalition after the election, you can bet what will be on the block, and that will be that they will be pursuing big new capital gains or wealth taxes. I just don't trust that Chris Hipkins has the strength to say no.
All right. Look, the funny thing is we go back to the last election, and this issue, I think, was one of the issues that actually got Labor over the line to that amazing MMP actual majority. And that was a whole lot of your former supporters were spooked by the idea of the Greens holding the balance of power and introducing a wealth tax. They abandoned National and voted for Labor to get over 50%. This could go wrong for National. It's not necessarily a sure electoral winner, is it?
I think a very different context this time because you'll recall that last election consistently the polls were showing that there wasn't a hope of a centre-right coalition. We were still in that COVID period where there was very strong support for the incumbent government. Where we are today, actually, odds on, we can have a centre-right government. And so the choices just become so clear for people. If people want a strong, growing economy, they want lower taxes, and they don't want a capital gains or a wealth tax, you have to vote for National. Alternatively, it's really clear that a vote for Labour, the Greens or Te Pāti Māori is a vote to put all of those big new taxes back on the table. And look, I hear the concerns of those who say, look, at the last election there may have been some people in the farming community who tried to be a bit strategic with their vote and ended up voting for a party of the left. Well, look, my message is just really clear. Don't try and get too clever on it. Just vote for the party that represents your values and the future you want to see for the country. National's put forward a really strong platform of policies to support our agricultural sector. We back farmers. We understand they pay a lot of bills in this country, and we will not be introducing the kinds of taxes that Labor...
Will you be introducing? Is it your plan to introduce any new tax?
No, look, where we're coming from is that we think that workers in New Zealand are already paying too much tax because inflation has pushed them into higher tax brackets. We've watched as Labor has introduced a host of new taxes, and what we want to do is get the balance right, which is that in New Zealand we've been spending so much more that's why Labor's had to go and search for new tax options. So we actually think there needs to be more discipline on the spending side, and that way we can have more balance on the tax side too.
All right. What are you doing for Matariki?
Well, this is embarrassing. I have done some Matariki celebration already in the form of going to a multicultural council event last night, and I will go to an event in Wellington tonight. But on the actual day, my family are actually away, and I am literally planning to spend some time with my books on my laptop, going through the details.
So you're going to watch Netflix on Matariki, let's be honest.
I'm going to nerd it up, Sean, and my colleagues would tell you that I do enjoy nerding it up from time to time. The idea of uninterrupted time to really dig deep into the details of our policy plans, something I'm looking forward to. But you can guarantee I'll go for a walk and have some fun as well. All
right. Look, you talked about spending, and the reason I raised Matariki, it's only the second year it has been, well, I'm going to say mandated rather than celebrated in New Zealand. And millions of dollars of government spin money has gone into all sorts of made-up claims about what Matariki means and what you should do in going home to your family. It is almost entirely a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy and a holiday introduced by Jacinda Ardern for woke, politically correct reasons. Will National continue with Matariki?
Look, we're going to continue with the public holiday, and I think Matariki will mean different things to different people. To some people, they will approach it as a time for reflection and looking forward to the year ahead. For others, it'll just be a day off work. And look, that's the nature of a multicultural country in which people don't all have the same ancestry, cultural traditions or approaches. I love that we're a country where people have different histories, different ancestries, different ways of looking at the world, and I wouldn't want to impose one view on anyone.
All right. And look, I want to go back to the polls quickly. Look, that was it was interesting watching on social media in particular, which I recognise is not the real world, the response not to the Curia poll, but to the one that showed essentially you could get a centre-right government. The Curia poll, which were actually probably more contemporaneous, tack that back a bit. One does get the feeling, though, that there is a tide. There is a tide turning. But I guess you people do not want all your supporters to say, we got it in the bag, let's not bother really paying much attention, because that would sink you.
Look, I definitely have a feeling when I travel across the country, and I've been in the Manawatu, the Wairarapa, the Auckland, and just in the last couple of weeks, and what I'm getting a feeling of is that people have really determined that New Zealand needs a change, that we are going in the wrong direction, they're looking to National. They can see that it's a time for strong economic management, that that's what we stand for and that that's what we'll deliver. But you're right. I don't want anyone getting complacent. We will only win this election if we do our absolute best to campaign like crazy. We're going to need signs on every fence. We're going to have to perform well. We're going to have good advertising, all of that. And we are very focused on that as a team. We are taking absolutely nothing for granted.
Yeah. How do you think Grant Robertson's feeling right now?
Oh, did you watch him in the press conference yesterday? He looked like a sad, sad man. I mean, there he is. He's lost his best friend in politics, Jacinda Ardern. Chris Hipkins has become the Prime Minister. Grant was cooking up a special project to introduce a wealth tax, clearly very excited about it, put endless hours into it. And then Chris Hipkins has come along and said, nope, that fantasy is dead. And I think that's obviously made Grant a little dejected. And look, here he is, and the economy is in deep, deep trouble. And who are people going to look to as the person who could have made some different decisions along the way? It's him.
Nicola, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Enjoy Netflix tomorrow.
You have a good one.
Cheers.
And, look, maybe just for you, I'll see if I can watch half an hour of it.
All right, good idea. That is Nicola Willis. She is the finance spokesperson and deputy leader of the National Party. And she sounded quite happy, quite relaxed, didn't she? But poor old Grant Robertson. And I'll tell you what, falling out between Labor Prime Ministers and finance ministers are not unusual. And I go back to cup of tea and a lie down time, though it was the inverse with David Longy and Roger Douglas. Roger Douglas wanted to reduce tax for most people. And Longy says, no, you can't do that. It was really the downfall of the 1984 Labor government, 87 Labor government. Was tax. So there is a history in Labor of them absolutely imploding over fundamental tax issues. And there is no doubt that Grant Robertson's political star is beginning to set. There is no doubt about that, as Chris Hipkins desperately hunts for the centre vote and as the tide turns for Labor.